Hello and welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. On this show, we are having open conversations about building a property business that creates cash flow and freedom. We are sharing our highs, our lows, and most importantly, the lessons that have come along the way from creating the holiday every 6 weeks lifestyle. From big picture strategy, maximising your potential, and right down to practical solutions. And so today you are joined by myself and Dave, and we are talking about outsourcing and delegating. And we're answering one of the big questions. Is it better to hire too early or too late? We've had a lot of very big lessons along the way to building our team. And it's a real privilege to be able to have a conversation about this between Dave and I, and to share that with you. It's a massive topic, and this won't be our last episode on this. So we touch on wealth dynamics as part of this, hiring, how systems fit as part of outsourcing, and how you can make sure you build a team that really works. I hear a lot of people who are not hiring well, and it's really hurting them and causing a lot of frustration. So let us show you a path through the frustrations and pains of starting to learn how to hire, and bring you along with what we've learned along the way. So, myself and Dave, ready to share this with you. Let's do this. Well, hello!
Hello there!
Welcome to this week's podcast, being recorded in Saint-Émilion. We are currently surrounded by vines on a lovely little vineyard overlooking Saint-Émilion in the distance. So a really nice, obviously with the motorhome. A really nice place to come and talk about this week's topic, which Dave, you are going to introduce.
Yes, so today's awesome topic is all about team, systems, outsourcing, delegating, how you do it, when you do it, how to make it work in a property business. We've got a lot to cover, basically.
Yeah, I think we're going to scratch the surface and figure out where we need to do other episodes. So let's just try and set the scene and see where we get to.
Absolutely. So I think words like outsourcing and delegation, these are, key words that we hear a lot.
Yeah,
okay?
Just outsource it, babe.
Just outsource it, babe. Yeah, exactly. And I think I'd love to start from a perspective of what is it? What does it mean? What is outsourcing? What does it mean to delegate within a property business? Let's just start with a quick overview of that, and from your perspective.
I think I really hate the word outsourcing. Just to me sounds like, just get rid of that, basically. So to me, I prefer what it means to work with a team and to get other people to run parts of your business for you. I'm always about semantics. So for me, I want to be able to have a company that can work without me. That's my objective. So we are consistently finding deals, working with investors, doing refurbishments, making sure everything's being run really profitably. That is an overview of a good company, and I want to be able to do that where my objective is to only bring the stuff that I really love to bring, and where everyone else is doing stuff that they're really good at bringing and that they really enjoy doing, and that ultimately people say you can't have passive income in property, but I definitely think that's not true. You just got to make sure that you've got a really good team to be able to support the passive nature of it. And also I think a business can also be passive as well, but it's all about building the team, and obviously you've got to have some systems. Systems are really there just to support the team to run it, to make it all work better. So I don't know if I've really answered your question there, but
almost. I've got one more question for you. Semantics, team versus outsource. So one of the things I see a lot in the approach, you've got two routes. You either go to a company to do it for you who are doing that thing already, and thereby you are outsourcing to them. So an example of that is lettings. If you go to a letting agent, a managing agent who runs a letting agency, you are outsourcing to them to manage your tenants, and you pay them the 10% or 12% or whatever. But a team is where you insource and you bring on a team member to do that function for you in the business. I think that there is a massive mindset barrier for a lot of people around the team side, and the outsource side seems a lot easier and a lot quicker and a lot more pain-free. Can you give me your opinion on where you stand on that?
Not necessarily true.
Yep.
I think you can have great outsourced companies and terrible outsourced companies. I think it's harder to make an outsourced company work exactly how you want them to, but I think if you're outsourcing an entire function, as long as the end result is good, it can be great. So if you can find a great letting agent who ultimately keep your tenants happy, are good at collecting rent, quick turnover of changes between tenants, if you can get a letting agent who can do all that, it means your portfolio operates really well, outsource it. Our experience is that it's very hard to find that that outsourced company that can do that, and maybe especially for the price that is generally on the market that you have to pay. Whereas we have found a great IT company to, do a very good job of a lot of our outsourced IT function, which has worked very well. And obviously you run a financial management service where you're basically people outsourcing their whole financial management function through from bookkeeping to financial controlling to financial director level. And I think that, again, it works really well, I think, because it is a whole department and you're doing it for a price that works well for people for a good result of what you get.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm getting from that is that there are pros and cons. There are pros and cons to it, and you really need to be assessing that. One of the things that the major pro that I think most people are aware of and that really leads them towards outsourcing rather than team insourcing is that they don't have to set up any systems or processes. This is where people start from. It's an easy route because you don't actually have to know what's happening. You're just like, there you go, deal with it.
It's kind of a route where abdication kind of can work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because someone else has to worry about all of that. It's their business.
And as long as they give you the good end result at the end of it, which is, I get, 95% of my revenue is always collected from my rents, that works pretty well.
It does. But then there's still one thing you have to do in both circumstances, right? Doesn't matter whether it's outsourced or insourced, you still have to oversee. And the question always comes, if you're trying to oversee someone where you've outsourced and it is their business, you have no control over what they're doing and how they're doing it.
So if it's not working, it's very hard to make it work.
You can't fix it.
Yeah, because it's their business.
Yeah, so either they're amazing and they provide the service you need and you're happy. And that's the pro. You don't have to set it all up. You don't have to worry about the systems. You just have to oversee it, and they deliver a good result. You're happy. You only see the end result. The downside is it's more expensive than insourcing generally, depending on size of business, and we'll get to that in a second. And also, you have no control, and we've had this before where we've outsourced things. We try and get our oar in to make the difference because we know it's not working.
It's just annoying, guys. No one wants Jack and Dave prodding around the edge.
And we're like, come on, can you try doing it this way or doing it that way? All you're doing is meddling in someone else's business. They don't necessarily want you to meddle either, and they're not really necessarily on board with your methods, and it makes for a very painful life. So then, if we're talking about this, we've got two options: outsource, insource, and we're talking to an audience here of people who are at all stages of business. For some people, insourcing will be more relevant, and some outsourcing more relevant. So, and I think the main reason for this would be size of business. So what are your thoughts on at what point do you go from outsourcing a function rather than trying to hire all the people to do your entire business? Why would you start with outsourcing, and at what point would you choose to insource?
Should we continue on the route of focusing on lettings as the example?
Great.
Because I think it's a good one. So I think we outsourced our lettings and probably until we had 60 units? Maybe 50?
50, 60.
And I think at that point, we were always of the mind that we never want to have a lettings business. And loads of people say that, right? I don't want to do my lettings, I want to outsource that. And actually we found someone who was doing a really great job for us on running our lettings, and that was brilliant. But then things changed, and that wasn't working so well for us anymore. So, and then we started looking at how much it would cost us to do the lettings ourselves. And we were like, we could do this for a lot less, for cheaper, or for kind of the same price but a lot better, because you'd have a lot more resource to put onto it. So that for us was the point where we kind of went, how much do you reckon we were paying on our lettings bills at that point? 60 properties, 10 grand average a year, 60 grand a year?
Yeah.
Let's say 60 grand a year. You're suddenly like, okay, definitely hire, someone in the UK, someone maybe in the Philippines. Yeah, I could have probably 2 full-time people or more helping on this. And like, if you compare that to what I've got in a letting agency, maybe I've got 1 day a week of someone's time for that amount of money. Like, how much attention am I getting? So that was the changeover point for us. It was like, if at first we can just get it to cost the same but be better, because we were finding that our arrears were getting worse, our voids were getting longer.
I think, and that's part of the pain of growth, right?
Yes.
And we all experience it at various stages of business growth. You are going to experience team coming in and things not going as well as they did before, and that's fine. The problem for us, going back to that initial issue, was that we questioned our outsourcing because we weren't able to meddle with the issues. So we saw the issues coming.
We tried to solve them.
We tried to help solve them, and we weren't. It wasn't possible for us to really solve them because it wasn't our business, and that's fine. And I'm sure they would have been solved in time.
Yep.
But that caused us to question, and it becomes a business decision of how much am I actually spending on this service versus what else could I do with that money? And suddenly you're like, okay, well I can get a lot more for my money because that business has to make a margin. That's the whole point. They're a separate business. They have to make a profit margin. So you're going to get half the time, less than half a person's time for the same money. And we suddenly thought, oh gosh, that's...
Whereas for us, we're not trying to make money from the lettings, we're just trying to do a good job, which means your net cash flow across the portfolio works well. So it's just like it
was a knock-on effect, wasn't it? Once, if we knew that if we could do a better job, we could probably spend the same amount of money and be way more profitable as a portfolio, just because we had way more resource to put on it with that same money.
Yes. So come back to your question, which was,
at what point do you go from potentially outsourcing? Because at the beginning you can't hire 5 people in a go. You've started a fledgling business. No, you can't.
Yeah, and you've only got like 5 properties, so you're probably only spending $5,000 a year on your lettings. So you can't do a lot with that. It's going to be minimal. And also, to run a good lettings company, you need quite a lot of different types of people. So therefore, just $5,000 a year, you could maybe get someone, as maybe in the Philippines, to do some of your administration for you. That's not really going to run a lettings company.
No.
So it's having enough resource to be able to get the different facets of people that you need.
So what's your number? Do you have a number? If someone says to you, I'm currently got a letting agent, I'm not sure when I should insource and hire a team member for this, what would you say?
I feel like it is about 50 or 60. I feel like it happened to us at a really good time.
Right time.
It could be less, depending if you're in a high value area, because you're then going to be paying more, aren't you, as a percentage on your lettings. I'm trying to remember, because I know Mark Homer, hearing him talk about this a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure he said it was around 50 that he thought it was worthwhile.
I think my memory was he said around 20 is when you start thinking about it. But having been through 20 units, I think it's potentially too early, and that brings me on to the next factor, right? We've been through various stages of team. We've gone up to a team of 17 and then back down again. And that again, fluctuation of growth phases in the business. We made it to 17.
But to be fair, 3 or 4 of those were Kickstart.
Yes,
people.
3 or 4 we had free labour from the government, which was lovely. Thanks, government. But in theory, we've then cut back as well, just to create efficiencies, and that was partly because we improved our own systemization and how we spec'd out the roles. But one of the big things that's been really clear is you get the right person with the right profile in the right role, and it works smoothly. Get the wrong person with the wrong profile in the wrong role,
and you want to destroy your business
it's
and
a car
pack
crash.
up and run away into the sunset. It's a car crash.
And it's nothing to do with if they're a nice or great or good person. It's not even, they could be great. They could top talent, just in the wrong role.
I think Dom's actually a great example, because Dom is amazing.
Oh, we love Dom.
Obviously we love Dom, we work with him, and he's we use Wealth Dynamics as a profiling tool. We'll do a whole podcast on Wealth Dynamics at some point, but in an overview, you've got 8 different profiles that it can put you into. If you're more on the right hand side, you're more flow from people, good at people, relationships. If you're at the top, you're great at starting stuff. If you're on the left, you're very good at following a process and making stuff work really well, more detail oriented. And if you're at the bottom, you're better at finishing things, better at project management, timing. So that's kind of an overview of what your profile would be. So Dom is very strong right hand side. He's a mirror image to you.
Total mirror image. The opposite.
The opposite to Dave. If Dom's in the role of bringing out the best in people, looking after other people, helping people to grow, he is amazing.
The best.
If you put him in charge of updating Arthur and our certificates and managing a budget, Like you want to punch him in the face, like, and that's not because he's not brilliant. It's just because I'd have him in the wrong role. I think it's a bit less clear cut with us because we've literally gone.
You and me, that is.
Me and you, because we've had to suck it up and do all of these roles at various points. So like, even though you are very strong left-hand side, so very process driven, you are actually very good at relationships. In a way, you kind of do it in quite a lordy way, like quite a process driven way. But you've kind of.
By the way, you've said Lordy there, like anyone who doesn't know wealth dynamics.
Sorry.
What are you on about, Lordy? Lord Dave. Who's Lord Dave?
I mean, this is Lord Dave, isn't it? We didn't tell you.
Lord is the name of the profile. To clarify, the profile on the very left-hand side, which is a systems process-driven individual. Yes. Carry on.
So we've kind of had to learn to do everything at various points, because you have to, like, to being a business owner, part of it is like you've just got to be able to do a pretty reasonable job at kind of everything for a period of time. Yeah. So we just had to kind of suck it up so we can do it. But you know, same thing with you. If your job was just about like all about looking after people and all about relationships the whole time, you would be much worse than you are in your more process driven role.
Yeah, I'd actually become pretty crap at some of those aspects. And I guess there's the two sides of this. There's quality of what someone can achieve, so how good they are at managing it, and actually people who are not necessarily of that profile can achieve good results in an area.
For a period of time.
Because then you go into the second aspect, which is, are they actually in their flow doing it? Is it something that energizes them or drains them of energy? And me dealing with people, every time I have to pick up the phone to someone on a relationship side of things, there is a drain on my energy, much more so than clicking open a spreadsheet. And that's very different to many people I work with.
Very excited.
Many people I work with where they won't click open that spreadsheet because they don't have the energy to do it because it drains them. And that just means that in my role in the business, if I was in charge of relationships and people, I would be constantly drained and I would be worn out much quicker. And that means you're just worse all round.
And you could do it for a period of time.
Yes.
If it matters most to the business, it's kind of worth it because the end result is like, okay, the business grows, the cash flow grows, it's worth it. But if you're doing that for like, and really the window's like, I reckon 18 months.
Yeah.
Is a pretty solid window.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone down a divert.
Yeah, I'm going to pull you back. I'm going to pull us back. So going back to where we were, which is outsourcing versus insourcing, and when you should do that in your business. We were talking about the fact that everyone, you've got a certain amount of money available. And I think we moved on to this because if you're just trying to hire one role, you've got to get the right type of person in that role for them to be good enough. And if you haven't got enough money, for example, for the lettings function, you've only got $5,000 available, you're only going to be able to hire one person really, and they're not going to be good enough in all the areas they need to be able to fulfill that role. Whereas if you suddenly got, somewhere between 30 and 60 grand available, you can say, I can hire two different people. We split out the functions to two different types of roles. One who's more process driven, doing all the back office stuff, updating spreadsheets, Arthur, whatever softwares you have, who's making sure everything is compliance is correct. And then you've got the other person who's your tenant facing person, who's better with people, able to get the best out of people, dealing with difficult situations and conflicts, negotiations. Very different profile, and you can actually get top talent in both profiles. Whereas if you try and put that all into one person, they're going to be average at it all. And in what we found in business, if you have someone who's average at everything, actually they're crap at everything. It's literally like, it's just never good enough. That's where it ends up, and that affects all of everything. It mostly affects your bottom line, your profit margins.
Yes, because if you're doing something that you're average at, you're probably going to be quite inefficient at it, which means you'll take too long to do it, which means the business can't really afford to do it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, where do we get to with this? So really, fledgling business starts up, they're outsourcing everything, and what that means is it's easier because all the systems are on the other side. The business you're outsourcing to will hopefully have a bigger team who have set it up well so that the different team members are in the right roles. And then there comes a point in your growth when you can start hiring team.
Yes, I mean, I think I kind of would slightly go aside from that to say getting some more, I think, administrative support for most people in more of an insourcing part-time approach as a starting point, I think does make sense sooner.
Great.
I think the lettings was a good example for a whole function to bring that to life, but I think like getting some sort of, obviously we don't really like the term virtual assistant, but that idea that there's just someone who can come and help you with some of these tasks that are actually very easily systemized, delegated.
So I'm going to call that a business administrator.
Yes.
You need to hire a business administrator to help you to begin with, right? Because the fact is, when you're running a business, starting to buy all these properties, there are just so many jobs on your list.
Yeah.
And loads of them are doable by someone else. And it's very easy to get someone very early on who just does those bits. I think we started with your classic UK
company, £25 an hour or something.
On per pay per hour VA.
Yes. I think there's an important lesson for me in talking about this, which is just how much exactly you allocate to this person. Because generally, as a business owner, we don't love our admin. We don't really want to do it, so it's easy, we kind of go, you know what, just get the admin off my plate, me pass it over to someone else and I'll just pay them for it. Now, if you're paying someone £25 an hour to do your admin, it kind of worked for me at first because it was just like I was working full time, so I had money from doing that.
Yeah.
I was only doing a few hours a week with them. Like, it just kind of got me started. But really, the business could not afford that. Because at that point, I maybe had one property, you know, making a few £100s a month. I was probably giving more than all of my money to the virtual assistant. So for me, there's a fine balance between what you outsource and what you can afford to outsource versus what you want to outsource. So therefore, this kind of like part-time, we've had another episode about this, which is basically hack yourself to use your time most efficiently and productively. Get over your perfectionism and know that it's going to be a bit chaotic along the way. And if you want it to be perfect along the way, good luck to you, you're not going to make any money. So that's like a whole separate thing. So really, my biggest learning, having been through the last 10 years, is just either bring on board just what you can actually afford to, whilst also making sure there's money left over for you.
Yep.
Or if you're going to basically say, I think it's worth investing in a team member to help with all of this stuff, because if they can do that, it will free me up to do this, which would make the business more money. I think it's a great concept, but I actually think we're generally terrible, most people, at executing this. Say I'm going to bring this person on, I'm going to pay them £1,000 a month, and if I can do that, it should, in 6 or 12 months' time, I should be earning an extra £2,000 a month because I did that. It generally doesn't work out that neat and tidily. It can do, but I think having that clarity about saying, if you are going to hire someone where the business cash flow cannot afford it, and essentially you're going to say, I'm going to invest 12 grand to bring someone on for £1,000 a month for the next year, because I think that investment will mean that I'm getting £2,000 a month at the end of that. I think you've just got to be so clear and so intentional about that. And essentially, like any other investment, right? You're like, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin because I think it's going to go upwards. However, if my bet is wrong, this is my stop loss. This is how much I can afford to lose. If I go below this point, I sell out. I cut my losses. And I think that's what you've got to think about your business and about hiring people. Like, it's an investment. If your cash flow can afford it, I think it's slightly different. You know, you can be a bit less anal about it, but I think having that clarity of, if you're going to invest over and above what the business can afford at that point, how long are you willing to invest that money for? And if it hasn't worked out, when are you going to cut your losses?
Yeah, great. And I guess there's one other aspect that I think I'd add to that, which is clarity when you do it on exactly what actions you are going to be taking and what is the result in terms of the income. Because if you're just saying, well, I'll just grow, I'll just grow, generic growth.
I'll buy all these properties that are great for long-term capital appreciation but have no cash flow. Ain't really going to work, is it?
Yeah, and that's one of the key parts of the finance side, which we're going to come to on a different episode. But that concept of how much cash you're making from each deal in your property business or any other business, what is the bottom line cash that is going to be distributable, usable towards the team. You're right, like if you are not very specific in what you're choosing you do, and you say, I'm going to hire someone £1,000 a month, I'm going to buy some properties, and then you actually make the type of property investment that doesn't make you much cash flow, just because that's what you've ended up doing, and you haven't married up these two concepts of investing in a team member versus cash flow being the end result of your actions, then you end up in a pit.
Or you go, I'm going to hire this person because if I free up my time, I can do this really high value stuff to make, I can go and I'm sourcing deals and I can source a load more deals with that time. But actually, you free up your time and actually you don't do that stuff.
Oh, you do something else
instead. You do something else instead. you love planning out and having a good plan, so your time gets freed up. It means you can make a good plan for how you're going to find more investors. You get a nice investor pipeline set up, you get a nice brochure set up, you plan some people that you want to reach out to. Made no money. I
have to say, we're talking from experience here of watching many an investor, mentoring many an investor, where the aim is to make the cash, but the problem is your mind gets lost in the weeds of all the actions you think you need to take prior to actually making that cash, right? And like you've just said, there's all these things you can do that are not cash generating. They're business actions, but they aren't the fastest path to cash. And if you just get stuck in the weeds doing those types of actions for whatever
they
reason,
don't feel like weeds. They feel very strategically important. But they're actually not doing anything. Which again is this whole perfectionist thing that we'll keep coming back to.
I think we've gone a bit off track here. I'm going to pull us back to team and systems. So we've now gotten to the point where we're saying one of the first hires should be a VA.
Yep.
And that should be fairly early on, ideally if you've got the cash flow to actually pay for that person, rather than paying more than your cash flow and investing in that person. That's the harder, more complex route. So with that hire, one of the biggest things I see, and we definitely did, one of the biggest weaknesses I see is that people seem to think that this first person that they hire can literally do everything in their business. They can run the whole thing. It's like, well, they're good, they're great, I really like them, they're great. So I'm going to give them the admin stuff. But I'm also going to give them
process
creation. They're going to create my processes for me, and actually they're really good. So I'm going to get them to hire my next team member. And you suddenly, when you spec out, no one really specs out the role properly. But I've asked our clients, okay, you want to hire someone, spec out every job you want them to do,
and then they're really hacked off. They're not doing a very good job.
Well, that's the thing, is you look at the role and you're like,
this is impossible.
No human being can do all of these things. Maybe not time-wise, but actually just no one is good at all these things. So most of the time what we find when we're talking about that role, that first hire, is it's cut back, be very specific about the exact roles you want them to do, and really look at it in terms of groupings, like we've said, in terms of what a personality is generally good at, what someone's skill sets are. You get someone who's very detail oriented, very systems oriented, give them all the administration part tasks and group them in a role. And if that means instead of hiring someone for 4 hours a day, you only hire them for 2 hours a day, that is better than trying to give that person the other stuff that is not in their flow, not in their personality profile. And that is where it starts to go wrong for most people. I think that's the first mistake everyone makes.
And then I guess the other one is thinking that I don't really like people, I don't like managing people, I don't like hiring people, I don't like I don't want to be involved in any of that stuff. So I think I just want to hire a manager to manage my company. And I think let's think about this through the lens of it being the person's first company. I think there is a difference if you are experienced in business, you've been through the process of growing a business, you know what it entails, and then subsequently for businesses down the line, you could start, I do think you can start from a top level down perspective, because you understand what it means to grow a company, what it means to hire a good person and fire a person. I think you have to learn the ropes. And so I think let's just focus this. If you've built a company before, this is probably making sense to you. You probably know that these are the warning flags. Your instincts are good on people because you've been through and you've done a university degree in building a business. And so then it's different. And you could start by going, I'll hire a great MD because I know what a great MD is because I've actually done a load of it and I've hired one of those before and I know what the people underneath are doing. Like, that is what I think is right.
Absolutely. And I think that brings me on to another point that is worth making. Those who are so inclined to hire higher ups very quickly rather than kind of get in the weeds and do it themselves, I think one of the key things they're also inclined to do is to hire and then let that person just get on with it and never check in. And this is called abdication.
Yes, it is. Right? Delegation by abdication is not systemization.
And I think this is a kind of, I want to say, a delusion that we have when we're the first time you're growing your business. First time you're growing a business, you kind of imagine, I'm going to just bring in someone great, they're just going to do this part for me, I don't need to learn how to do it, I don't need to know anything about it because I'm going to bring them in and they can just do it because that's their skill set. If you do that as the business owner, you do not learn what you need to know whether that person's doing their job well, to know how to improve what they're doing, to know how to integrate it better into your business, because it's just you just don't know what you need to know to run your own business. So it's almost like every business owner needs to go through the process once. And we're not talking about taking on that role for your life of your business. It's literally like the first time you have to do it, know what it's entailed and see what all the crap that goes wrong is, so that you can see if someone else is doing it and say, yeah, that's not the best way. Like, I can, see that it's not working, and I can actually help work out why not.
Because it's true, like there's a lot of, I'm not involved in most stuff in the property company now, but I know when something's not working, a few troubleshooting ideas, because I've been there and I've done it.
Yeah.
So then I'm just like, we need to ask that person that question, or maybe that person isn't actually right for that role anymore.
That brings me to actually the one tiny point, which is once you grow your team to a certain size, the best way to manage them and monitor them is not micromanagement, it's KPIs. Right? Yes. KPIs being the trackable numbers, key performance indicators, the trackable numbers that are going to tell you on a high level whether they're succeeding in their role or not. And I would say that if you delegate by abdication and you don't learn the role, and that you end up watching them and not really just checking in occasionally, I know from my own experience of having tried to do that, it is impossible to choose a KPI that is right. You actually don't know what numbers are right. You don't know what numbers are real, because you don't know what's involved in the role, and you don't know which parts are truly important to be monitoring. So that's one I would say is hugely undermined if you abdicate rather than just learning the ropes, doing it properly first, making it work yourself, and then delegating.
I think we've got to do a whole episode on KPIs at some point.
Yeah, we'll do that.
This is like, there's so much I could say, and I'm just like, no, it's not the time.
I'm aware of time, actually. I'm glad you said that, because I want to just finish up, because we've spent most of this episode talking about team, outsourcing, hiring, but we haven't really touched upon systemization. Yes. And I'd like you to just talk us through why it is that we've hardly talked about systemization.
Because we beat the drum of focus. I think for me, having been there and been very unfocused in what we were doing, and by unfocused I mean, just to reiterate, trying to build multiple property businesses at the same time. So trying to build a buy-to-let portfolio and a sourcing company and a development company, all these different things. Yeah. So for me, the path of least resistance is to be focused by knowing what business you're actually building and focusing on doing a good job of building that, and being in yourself and how you're building it replicable. So every time you source a deal, just be aware of how you're doing it and do it in a focused way, so that every single time you're taking the same kind of steps. Because otherwise, if you try and systemize everything from multiple business models, you can't take the same process every time. Like, it's just chaos. There's too many things going on. Like, you could spend a year writing up processes for multiple business models and you wouldn't scratch the surface. And that's not an income generating task. So for me, the answer is be focused in your business model and make sure you are focused enough and replicable enough in your approach that you naturally start to systemize it. And then as you start to bring in team members, just being mindful of the fact that you're going to want them to start to probably help you in creating those processes. But the fact is, there is a process, it's just maybe not documented in it because it's all up here, but that's fine, because there is actually a process that you've been following yourself. So then you can start to brief people as they come in what the process is and ask them to write it down and document it for you.
Yeah. So in that respect, there's quite a few different avenues I could go down. I would say that the systemized approach, this is what we call it, the systemized approach, is that the simpler the business you're building, the easier it is to systemize.
Yep.
And I'd go so far as to say the more complex the business, as in multiple business models, the more impossible, it's not harder, the more impossible it is to systemize.
Because you don't have enough time yourself to do it. You actually can't afford to hire people to do it because the businesses won't be profitable enough, because you'd never really focused on profitability enough. You focused on diversification. So yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I'm going to say it's impossible. It's
impossible. So
laying down our flag there.
And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you do if it's a simple business model, you're doing exactly the same thing every time. And you could literally, after doing it 2 or 3 times, you can say, all right, what do I do? It's literally one list of jobs per function in the business, whether that's purchase progression or sourcing the property or what you're doing during the refurb. If it's the same every time and it's one model, it's just one list, and it's very easy to document. And what we do, a little tip is, when we first take on a team member, we haven't got the system in place yet, we would literally just explain what we do and record it. just explain it in a meeting and record it, and then they go away and they re-listen to that recording, and they'll write it all down and create the system. We'll tell them how to do it.
Let's just pause there. We're getting rained on. Okay. What did you say?
I don't know, something about, so if it's systemized, if it's simple, you can just, it's one list and then we record it and then tell them.
Should we move inside?
No, we can finish that.
Okay.
It's fine. And then record it, and then they just write it all out from that recording. So it's a nice, simple method, and I think brings me back to the perfectionism thing, because if you are too perfectionist about it, and I see this in busy business owners who, you covered that in a separate episode. If you're too perfectionist about it, you feel like you need it. You hire someone, it needs to be all perfect for them, and you feel too self-conscious to it reflects too badly on you if you don't have it all set up right. And as a business owner, it's never going to be right. You just got to accept that hiring a person is that route to success, and that part of their role, you just make it clear to them, this isn't ready yet. Part of your role is going to be systemizing it, and that comes across brilliantly. And actually, it shows a level of you putting trust in them to help you and build, and that people will buy into that. That new team members. I just think it's a simple method that works, and that then the person who's actually doing the job is the one building the process for you, as long as you're helping them. So there's
and as long as it's the right person to do that. And not everyone can do that. Come back to Dom, if I asked him to go and set up a process, no. It's not going to work. So again, that kind of does figure into if you're early and bringing on a new team member, we've generally done better with people who are on the left-hand side, who can take a process that is very close to being there, write it up, put it in a logical order, and then start to do it. For me, that's someone who's got a bit more mechanic. I'm talking about wealth dynamics again here. Mechanic, lord, accumulator. I do think they're quite a good first hire. Yeah,
I would say that as well. The first hire, left-hand side, because also a lot of the jobs we business owners don't want to do are the ones that are within the flow of administration.
Yes.
And that person also is good at process. So if you've got them there, then it's much easier. And I often see that the jobs that are on the right-hand side, the personality relationships ones, are generally more income generating. So they're the ones you're going to hang on to for longer, because they're more important to the success of the business, more valuable.
Yep.
So anything else you want to say about systemization? Because again, it's a real key word. It's a buzzword.
It is a real key word. For me, at this point, for me, the learning is take a systemized approach, don't systemize. We can do another episode that's more around that, because I kind of want to keep it focused more on the team side of it, because I actually think team is more important. And then again, the next part of it is it's not just hiring people, is it? It's then how you then train them up, onboard them, make sure that they're happy and looked after, and don't just try and blame them for everything. It's that balance of, when do you take responsibility for someone not doing a good job, and when are they not the right person for the job? Do you have any thoughts about this? Maybe it's worth talking about some of our first experiences in...
Okay, and I think we'll end it on this.
Yes.
End it on a Jack and Dave weakness. Our bad moments. So we have definitely, one of our biggest weaknesses in the past has been too caring. We're always caring about our team members. I mean, caring in a negative way. We were too much trying to help our team members too much, and too much belief that it's all our fault. If they're not doing well enough, I'm sure we can push them up, help them up, and really wanting to support them 150% and do everything in our power to guide them and grow them. And all it's meant is that when the person isn't right, instead of
we take on all the responsibility for it.
Yeah, we just act no, it's fine. I can solve this. I can solve this person. They're not doing it well enough. I'm sure I can train them better. I'm sure they didn't mean to. There's been so many excuses go through our mind that have ended up with us hanging on to the wrong person in the wrong role for a very long time.
Yeah,
when it's nowadays, it's so clear. It's no, they didn't. They're not the right person. Either they're not good enough, or they're not in the right role, or whatever the reason is. It's the wrong role. It's the wrong person. So you have to either move them on, or move them within the business to a better role for them. That learning is huge, right? We've literally wasted so much time and money looking after people who weren't right.
Yes. And I think you can also go on the flip side too far too. We've seen other people be so ruthless and take no accountability for their role in the fact the person isn't delivering, and just are mean to their team members, fire them really quickly. And it's like, you know, you've got to take your share of the responsibility here too. So as with all of this, balance is the middle way. Like, I think we have an amazing team of people and we are very supportive and we do go above and beyond, but that's because they're brilliant, and of course they've got their weaknesses and everyone goes through their crap, but we help and support them to become the best versions of themselves. But we don't take responsibility for them in the same way. It's like, I will open the door to you to grow and evolve, but you've got to be the one that steps through it, and you prove to me if you want to do it or not. Wow, I feel like we only just scratched the surface of that topic today. So I'm really looking forward to expanding on this conversation as the weeks and months develop. So listen to this space. If you're enjoying the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast so far, we would really appreciate it if you would leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you've got time to write a few words to let us know what you think of the show, we would really love to hear from you. So next week I am so excited to be joined by Yvette from Kingham Ellis Property, and I would consider Yvette as one of the dark horses of the property investment world, because she is a badass. Experience of doing tens of millions of pounds worth of property deals. She's made millions of pounds for other millionaires, and now she has her own property investment company with her husband and partner Chris Wheatcroft. But we're not going to be talking too much about deals next week. We're going to be talking about overcoming perfectionism, because actually Yvette's results have skyrocketed over the last 12 months as she's overcome some of those perfectionist barriers underneath. So really amazing conversation. I can't wait for you all to hear it. So until then, have a great week.